Um, my name is Andrew Osborne, formerly, not formerly, what the fuck? Hey, what's good, y'all? My name's Andrew Osborne. I go by the gamer tag Crazy Train as well as my online moniker. I'm an X-Gears professional coach, an entertainer, and a competitive gamer. It is 2:46 a.m. on December 20th of 2020, and I'm making this video to talk about anxiety about making videos. And I'm not even sure if anxiety is really the right word, but we're just gonna step out here and just start this video because that's sort of in like a weird meta way. I haven't made videos because I want everything to be perfect. I want everything to look great, right? And that's hard to do. And it's really, it takes a lot of practice. But I don't want to practice doing it because to practice it means you have to suck at something. So I'm just like committing to it. And I'm saying, okay, it's the worst optimal time. It's almost 3 in the morning. I just casted a Gears of War tournament for 5 straight hours. My voice is completely shot. I'm not very, very awake right now, but like under the most unideal, I don't even know if that's the right word, settings, I'm going to put together and in one take, in one go, with no script, I'm going to make a podcast episode for you all. And here we go. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Andrew Osborne, and what you're about to hear is coming immediately off the dome. There's no planning here. I decided to do this 5 minutes ago. It's 3 in the morning. I don't have answers for what you guys are about to hear, but I can promise you it's worth listening to. Probably. I rescind the earlier promise, okay? I'm out here busting out the 4-digit SAT vocab. Rescind. I take it back. I guess here we go. I have to say, at age 19, the scariest thing about the world is always being asked for answers that you don't have. And I think the worst part about all that is you're not expected to have the answers either. People just like asking the questions, and it pisses me off. I recently had like a heart to heart with my mom, who's been my greatest supporter in my life. I'm incredibly grateful to have her. She's provided just the stability in my life. She's cooked for me always, an amazing cook. She's always been there to like support what I wanted to do, let me try different sports, never pressured me into having to do something because I showed potential at it. She always wanted to make sure, and this is sort of like a quote from her. She said, "I want Andy to stay Andy." And for me, that has always been something consistent with her until I started gaming competitively. And this had started about sophomore or so year in high school. Was I've always liked gaming competitively, but I hadn't been a big gamer growing up. I mean, my first exposure to video games was my dad playing Gears of War with his buddies from work, but then having to hop on a conference call and he would give me the controller, just so he wouldn't go AFK, and I would just wander around the map with this controller at age probably 6 at the time when the first Gears of War dropped. And yeah, that was my exposure to gaming. My parents were really, really strict. I wasn't allowed to play M games until I was like 14 or so. So I was never like the squeaker, the young kid playing Call of Duty, Modern Warfare 2. Like my first Call of Duty was Black Ops 3. I don't even know when that game dropped, but I think I was probably like 13, maybe 14 when I first played that. Because it was like an M-rated game. I remember it being really, really big back in the day. I would go over to my friend's house. Uh, his name was Andy G, actually, and we would go play Battlefront 2. And it was a teen-rated game, but I don't know if I was a teenager yet, so this was like big for me, right? Especially coming from like a house and a home that was very, very strict on what I could and couldn't play. But that's sort of like the backstory there. But my sophomore year, Gears of War was still a huge part of my life. My dad had that was like the game we played together. But when the game Ultimate Edition released, it was a remastering of Gears of War 1, right? So this was almost like a remastering of my very first experience with Gears with my father. But I was now old enough to play it on my own, to like do what I wanted with the game. And I saw ads for like Gears Esports, Ultimate Edition Esports, and that just the inner competitor in me, which has always been there, like immediately looked at that and said, "Yes, that is what I will do." And so like I would get on like game battles, and I'm not even really gonna say like, "Oh, I've been grinding all these matches," and like, "Oh, this and that." I was like crazy dedicated to the grind. I wasn't. I had no idea what I was doing, but I remember reaching out to people and being like, "Hey, you want to make a team?" Right? And just like starting that process. I loved it. Working with these players, working with these people, and we were terrible. We fucking were. We were absolutely terrible, but I still loved it. And I thought we were good. And it was more than I thought we were good. I thought we were better than we were the day before. And that difference day to day was really, really exciting for me. And so in Gears of War UE, that's when I got introduced into competitive gears, started following it, but I was nowhere good enough to travel. I hadn't really told my parents about it. They knew I played the game, but they didn't realize like there was competitive gaming. Like just keep in mind, like that wasn't really a thing. Like it was just starting to be a thing. Um, at least for like me and what I was aware of. It was my first introduction to it. And then Gears of War 4 came out, and that's when like the Gears circuit had like its own thing. Like it was the GPC, the Gears Professional Circuit. It was on Gears 4. There were like set events. It was sick. And I remember going, wow, bright lights, stage, money, and these players, their gamer tags sound sick. I remember that being like the biggest thing that was like huge to me. And so I would track that down and I was like, I need to name myself something. And that's where the branding Crazy Train came from. My full name, Andrew Osborne, obviously like Ozzy Osbourne made the freaking banger Crazy Train. And then also like I'll just go off on tangents and I'm high energy all the time, talking quickly, running different ideas and whatnot. And it was crazy, for lack of a better word. That was the branding. It just sort of happened. And I sort of almost grew into the branding. It's weird. It's really weird. Um, I went by Crazy Train, but as I eventually made it into the Gears professional league as a coach, believe it or not, um, Crazy Train just seemed to fit better and better as the months went on. As someone who's high energy, goes off and like starts something and keeps it going, very very momentum based, high energy. I keep saying high energy, but I don't know what else to say. That's just it, right? And that was huge. And I remember arguing with my parents because my dad had said he would pay for my flight to go to Boston. This was in my senior year of high school, right? So this is 2 years later after I've done enough hustling in the amateur league, realized I didn't have the time to invest as a player. Because I was working sports at the time. I was an elite level rower. I was one of the best in my recruiting class in the entire country, and I was traveling for that a lot. And that was what college was supposed to be for me. I was supposed to go row at like Penn State or someplace like that, and ended up like I just dropped that. And that wasn't what I was gonna do. And there's a lot of friction there with my family because that was what was gonna pay for my college. That was what I'd been doing every single day, twice a day for 3 years. And there was a lot of friction there, especially going into something where I was like, hey, I'm going to put all that time and effort that used to go into this athletic sport that was going to make me money and give me a path to college into a video game, right? So there's a lot of friction there. But they knew how determined I was, and like they could see I was taking it seriously. They could see I wasn't just like mindlessly playing the game, saying, "Oh, I'm gonna be great," and not really backing that up. I had these schedules, I had these ideas. I was always working. They could see how many hours I was putting into it. The communication I had with them was really, really key. Saying, "Hey, I believe in this, and if you support me, you'll support this." And but it is hard to convince your parents it's not just another phase, right? But I did it. And I remember my dad saying he was going to pay for my flight to go to Boston. And this was it. I was on a roster. I was coaching at the point in time because I didn't have the time to play, but I felt like I knew the game. I love to be high energy. I've always had a very analytical mind, and wanted to be involved any way I could. I was not going to be denied the opportunity to compete, regardless of how much time I had. And that. I just made up my mind. So going to coach this amateur team, this was Team Hydra at the time, and this roster was Nunez, Noxious Hero, Jay Blazin, Retro Shot, and Seduceful, and me, Crazy Train. I was the youngest person on this roster by about 3 years, I think. At the time, I was 17, I think 18 maybe. Um, and everyone else was like mid 20s, early 20s, late 20s, like that kind of vibe. Like you've heard of these names if you follow professional gears, like Nunez and Noxious Hero. These people have been in the scene forever, and I'm a nobody, and I'm coaching this team. But my dad was gonna pay for my flight, right? I keep circling back to this because this was huge. I was gonna get to travel, and my family were gonna support it, and then they weren't going to. But I had prepared for this. Because I told myself I will not be denied this. I will make sure that me and me alone is the only thing I rely on to make this happen. So I ended up spending like $500 or something on like a round trip flight to Boston. I live in Ohio, so it was low key bullshit how expensive it was, but whatever, right? And I went to Boston, got off the plane, whatever Uber to the Airbnb address I was texted in the team chat, and I opened the door, and that's like my team. Those are the people who like put faith in me and trusted me, and it was so cool to like see these guys and be like, yo, what's good, Seduceful? Or what's good, Noxious Hero? Like all of these names and voices that you've heard in your ears for the past months. Or in this case, it was only like a month and a half, maybe a month that we'd been playing together before this event. This was the last event of the Gears 4 season 2, right? So I'm already like the very last event of 2 full seasons of Gears of War. I finally like got the opportunity to go. So like I'm definitely late. I'm behind the curve here. And it was just so cool to like put a name to a face and then be like, yo, this is like realizing like I'm in a house in a different state to go compete for video games and money, and people are gonna watch. Like me at 17 was like, bro, I've made it. I'm in Optic now. I'm in phase. Like jokingly, I was like, I've done it, and it was insane. But we went to that event and actually ended up placing top 12. There's one really like memorable moment where we were playing against a team. Like this match was whether or not we made it into like the pro pools for the next day, and like got to take our headshots and play on the main stage, and like we won that match, and it was like really close, but it was a super hype match, and that was just insane. And like I obviously being the youngest one there, having the least competitive experience, I wasn't a huge impact as a coach. Like I wasn't a good coach. I straight up wasn't. But like there were a couple moments where like I had made a play call or like said something that like won us the round. And like knowing that I had, even if it was just 2 or 3 rounds over the probably 100 we played that day, that I made a positive impact for, was just a really exciting feeling for me. And then we played in the pro pools, and in the final bracket, we ended up placing like top 12 or something, which was in the money, right? Which was like, that was everything. Because I got to go home and look my dad in the eye and be like, hey, remember that $500 I spent on my plane ticket? I got a little bit of money back. Not even enough to cover going there and food, but I got some of it, just a little bit back. And that was like such a cool thought, such a cool concept to me. And then that summer, I had done like a podcast sort of series, but I did it all wrong, right? I was a lifeguard, just trying to make money in the off season, I guess, over the summer before the release of Gears 5. And being a lifeguard, you just sit there. Hopefully, if all goes well, you just sit there. And so that's what I was doing. I was just sitting there. But I woke up every day thinking about this. Like it was not an exaggeration to say that I'm obsessed with esports, and this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. And I knew it then. This was like a year and a half ago. And I would just sit there. So all I would do is think about esports, think about strats, think about my concepts, think about how do I as a person evolve in esports? What am I good at? What am I bad at? How do I improve on that? How do I recognize, how do I even start this conversation with myself about like self-awareness and recognition of strengths and weaknesses? And like, just I grappled with just a taste of esports, everything about how do I fit into this world? Because I'm an anomaly, right? I was the youngest coach in the professional circuit. I didn't grow up playing video games. I wasn't particularly insane at them. Like I was a very good gamer, but I was not 0.001%. I was probably like top of 1%, right? And I just really wrestled with this idea, and I would put my thoughts on Twitter, and it was a series of episodes, all like 2-minute videos I'd put on Twitter. I probably did maybe 30 of these over the course of like 2 months or so, and I would go to work as a lifeguard, sit there all day just on the stand, watching, keeping track of everything, but thinking, because it doesn't really require a lot of thinking, and I would drive home, and on the way home, I would put my phone on the dash, like hook it into this little hook system that fit into like the AC of my car, press record, and I would just talk. Whatever ideas were cooking up in my brain, I would talk out. And this series was called Car Talk with Crazy Train, right? And this series of content that got me it got me traction, excuse me, on Twitter. This is where professional players, professional casters. Like I remember the very, very first video I did was talking about roster insecurities in Gears of War because this was running rampant, especially at the end of Gears 4 during the whole WrestleMania. And people were getting dropped off teams left and right. The Gears scene is obviously very, very passionate, very, very high energy. There's a lot of arguments and things and whatnot. But people were always worried about losing their spot. And I remember thinking about this and being like, hey, the reason that there's roster insecurities, it was something about like I don't even remember it now, but it was something along the lines of like you're not making the players around you better. You're only focused on how you're playing. So that insecurity, because you're only concerned about your own results, isolates you from a group or a collective goal. It makes you more likely to get dropped. You're not helping anyone. But if every single person on that team didn't give a shit about themselves, but cared immensely about the other four players on their team, then each of those players would have 4 times the support than they'd have if they just supported themselves, right? That math adds up. Fucking big brain over here. And like that concept, I just put it out in video. It was like a 2-minute video I threw up on Twitter, and it got like hella attraction. It got like 40 likes, a couple of comments, or no, it got like 90 likes actually. I remember that being huge for me. I got like 90 likes, a bunch of retweets, but the people who responded to it were really what drove me. Like Ribs, who was this player who I'd watched play throughout UE, I'd watched play throughout Gears 4, and then I knew was like a caster right now, getting involved in that. He like responded to this and he said, couldn't agree more. This was well thought out. Keep these up. And someone else like Fallout, another, Gears legend, now turned caster, also said something along the similar lines. So I was like, holy shit, I could do this. And so I banged out a ton of these videos. Some of them sucked. Some of them were kind of forced. Some of them were actually really, really good. But it was that got people like just, my name was out there. Right? You think Gears of War, you scroll through Twitter, you ran into me. Whether or not you liked it, you saw Crazy Train on Twitter. Even if you didn't follow him, because people would retweet it, people would like it. And I was just accuracy by volume. I was throwing out video after video after video after tweet after tweet after tweet. It couldn't help but one of them would eventually hit, right? But it did just that. And a bunch of different people, quote, saw me or met me or were introduced to me at some point in time over that summer. And during that summer, I'd done a lot of networking. And one of the earlier amateur teams, who I actually coached for a bit and then got dropped off of because I sucked as a coach, was Hive, right? And I had sort of talked with the players and members of Hive, specifically Jeff, who at that point in time was the team captain. And they had reached out to me and said, hey, we're looking for someone just to record our VOD. Will you do that for us? We'll pay like $100 a month. And so in my mindset, I was like, no, right? Like I didn't want to be just record VOD, get the money and move on, right? That's not why I was doing this. That's not what drove me. That's not what woke me up in the morning. So I said, pay me $0, but give me the title of coach. And I thought in my head, I was like, over time, I'm just going to convince these kids, because they were also kids just like me. I was no longer coaching a roster of people who was older than me. The average age on Hive was like 18, and I was 18, right? So it was a weird dynamic to try and figure out. And I was like a new kid on the block who was supposed to be in a coaching role, which was supposed to be respected, but I wasn't respected. And I didn't all the way know what I was talking about or really much at all. Like it was this really fluid, uncomfortable environment. But I put forth a lot of effort, and I really cared about what I did. And when we got to LAN events, I brought the energy nonstop. And whether or not I was changing the game with strategy, which I likely wasn't, or bringing new concepts to the table, I was just another set of eyes that cared just as much as everyone else. And because I didn't have to worry about shooting, and because I didn't have to stress about my own personal performance on the sticks, I could bring more energy than any damn person in that entire stadium. And something about that hard work, as well as like being well spoken, I did a lot of the interviews for the team and whatnot, just started slowly to gain attention and gain respect. And we actually ended up placing top 4 at that event. And everyone was like, oh shit, Hive placed top 4. They've been like top 6 once before at a small invitational, and top 12 like in previous, top 8 in previous stuff. They broke into top 4. And they beat Ghost, and they beat like Rise. And those were like 2 matches we weren't supposed to win. We got top 4 when we were supposed to win top 16. And from there, we had the next, that was San Diego, then Mexico. Mexico is everything to Gears of War. And if you know anything about the scene, you know absolutely this is true. And we went to Mexico, and this was the first time that I had done something gaming in my life where there was an expectation of me. Like this was insane. Like there were people, professionals, who got paid to play video games, who, when thinking of my name, going back to Crazy Train, right? Who little old 13-year-old and 14-year-old me thought of, went, uh, this kid is going to bring something to the table. Whether or not it was good, bad, different, old, the fact that they had an expectation tied to this brand that I'd created, I don't know why I'm holding a pencil, I'm just fidgeting with it. Bleh. Um, this was everything to me. I was like, I'm a brand now. Like I'm a person who means something. And that was so empowering. And God, I don't even know how to put that into words. But realizing that I was now something to care about. Oh God. I'm getting a little emotional about this. Made me realize that this is why I'm doing what I'm doing. People attaching some sort of expectation to my name, and then that challenge, that responsibility to fulfill to that expectation. I loved that. That was enticing. That was scary. That it was just what I wanted to do. And then we went to Mexico City. I got to do a video interview, like the professional one, where it has like my name slide in, hero action shots, dope interview. I was like, bro, I've freaking made it. Like every single time there was another notch. I was like, I've made it. I made it. No, no, no. Now I've made it. It just kept going up. And those expectations rose, and I was so excited. Every moment was sick. And then we placed top four in Mexico. We were one round away from winning the semifinal, or to the final, the grand finals, in my third LAN event ever. This was incredibly exciting. And by that point in time, I felt a little bit more confident as a coach. I definitely wasn't, you know, a huge impact as far as like strategy, but like knowing how to talk to each individual player, bringing like the team together almost a little bit, bringing that energy, especially on lane where it's so important, being that sixth man who didn't have to worry about shooting and could focus on the small little details. Um, that was my role, and it was still not very well defined, still kind of fluid. But I felt like I was at home by that point in time. We placed top four again, but following that event, Hive went on some, or me specifically, I had some miscommunication with the team. I feel like they felt like I wasn't doing enough, whereas I felt like I was doing everything I could. What else can I do? There was just this really uh frustrating, I guess, at the time, lack of not lack of communication because we talked, but there was like a miscommunication, right? We were all young, we were focusing on new things, lots of pressure playing against some of the best teams in the world, literally the best teams in the world, who might be at their team house or whatever, and we're coming home after school and eating dinner with the family and then getting online, playing against teams, streaming full time from team houses and shit. Like it was stressful, definitely. And I actually, at a certain point in time, like there's just this miscommunication. I didn't understand what my role was. The team felt like I wasn't contributing, or like when I was contributing, it was harmful more than it was beneficial. And these were really confusing times for me, and obviously very frustrating. But the team had decided to like bench me. They didn't want me involved in scrims, anything else. We knew the rest of the events were sort of going to be like online. They wanted nothing to do with me. Um, that was definitely the lowest point I've been in my, I don't know if you'd call it a career, but in my competitive Gears experience that I've had. Um, and it was my fault, I guess. I mean, the communication on my end wasn't there. I guess the effort and strategy, I wasn't bringing enough new things to the table, or I guess maybe they felt like I was mooching off them, or I wasn't doing enough strategy. I feel like the idea of what a coach for this team should look like wasn't agreed upon by everyone, and they just decided, let's try it without him whatsoever. And it it didn't go great. It didn't go bad. It just sort of went on without me, and that was very, very frustrating because I had felt like and wanted to be, even if I wasn't, like something in me really wanted it to be so I thought it was, the fact that it would be part of something that I mattered to. And this was right when I was starting to get like the, oh, I'm worth it. Oh, I'm something important. Like that ego started to rise a little bit. And I honestly think getting benched at that point in time was hugely helpful to me in the long run. Like going back, realizing where I am now, what I was doing for that team, it was incredibly humbling, but it was also incredibly important to run into that friction. Because to be honest, I had gotten really, really lucky with the connections I'd made in the industry. The teams I was lucky to get work with a team who was so talented. Um, as Hive, be a part of that and associated with that brand. When in reality, I was a minor contributor at best to the actual performance of the team. That was incredibly important. That's a really, really important part of how I've grown and where I'm moving today. Because it was like, what I thought of myself and what I thought others thought of me are two very, very different things. And the whole third difference isn't, what I think of myself is important, but it's not more important than what others think of me. Like I don't really know how to explain it. It's just like having to balance this idea of self-confidence and self-worth alongside recognizing that you're only as good as those around you and how they value you, right? Because if you're like the smartest, whatever, best person in the world, but no one wants to interact with you, you're not making an impact on anyone, even though you're, quote, the smartest, best person in the world. But if you're not that smart, doesn't make not that great at whatever you do, but like you're making positive impact somehow on a large group of people, you're suddenly, quote, better than the smartest person in the world. I don't know if that makes sense, but I was somewhere just trying to figure out where do I stand, how to make an impact on others while also dealing with my own like idea of like where do I fit? What am I doing? I'm a coach with less experience than the players. How does this work? How do I there was no one to look up to necessarily. There wasn't a playbook. I couldn't say, "Hey, yeah, you remember when you did this? How did that go about that for you?" Like I could talk to other coaches, and I did. I asked for help a lot. I reached out to people, most notably Fatal Strike, the coach of Reciprocity, um, Gears legend, competed on teams like TK back in the day, that coached Ghost, Team Reciprocity, won championships, etc., etc. And I would go to him and be like, I'm so lost right now. And I would read him out these situations and talk to him, even when he's a competitor at that time. Um, but I rode the fine line of talking to him about my own problems and trying to grow as an individual without compromising like the competitive integrity of like my team and what we're doing. Um, but it was a crazy part of my life to try and figure out how do I help others when I've not been there before? How do I make those around me better instead of worrying about myself? And I feel like almost in a way it went back to that very, very first tweet that got me the attention in the gear scene, that people recognized and said, "Hey, he gets it. He understands that concept." And it was, how do I make those around me better without being concerned about myself? Wholeheartedly letting go of the ego, letting go of whatever you think you are and however important you think you are. And how do I only focus on making those around me better? And I just think that journey from realizing that's that truth, and then over the next couple months through highs, through lows, finally coming around to saying, yes, I had early on recognized this truth, but the hardest part about that was recognizing having the self-awareness to apply that truth to myself. I said something out into the world that I believe to be true, but I didn't apply it to myself until much, much later on. But once I did that, I felt I found myself. I was someone who was going to make those around me better. I was going to make your day better. I was going to make you laugh. I was going to talk to you about your whatever you're working on. I was going to help you with your game plan. I was going to watch VOD. I started to stream a lot more. Like, I no longer got caught up in asking the question, who am I, to myself. I was more focused on who am I to those around me? How do I make those around me better? And I keep repeating this because I'm still struggling with this concept, trying to synthesize some grander plan or some better direction to go in. But it really was this sort of full circle realization that I need to apply it to myself that allowed me to let go of that ego, let go of that concern of the self, and really just focus on those around me. And from there, that's where I honestly think I took off. My Twitter impressions at that point went down. My impact in the scene went down. I didn't place any better than I did when I first started out coaching, but my mental health and the impact I had on others around me went up. I was happier as a person. I was more productive. I was more creative, and it was paramount that I made that transition and made that realization because now it's sustainable. What I love to do is I can keep doing. It's sustainable. It doesn't necessarily have to have one specific goal. It doesn't have to have a direction. But because I had this realization, I got this system together, and I knew that my job was to make others around me better, that was something I could wake up every day and try and do. And without that, I wouldn't be able to keep doing the esports, the gaming. I would lose myself in certain things. It just wouldn't have happened. So I could not be more grateful for that journey in professional coaching, from the ups, the downs, the highs, the lows, the things I've taken away, the relationships I've built, the things I've fucked up. That's so important. And to do all that before the age of 19, I could not be more grateful for those experiences. And now it is, like I said, it's about 3 a.m., December 20th, 2020. And I'm 19. I just finished up my first semester of sophomore year of college. And, well, this is my first YouTube video. I don't know how to make this video happen. I don't know what's going to look like. I'm deathly terrified and afraid that this is going to look like shit and be shit. But as I'm making this video, literally in this first take, in this only take of this video, I'm realizing that that's exactly how it's supposed to be. I need to be deathly afraid of this, and I need to be worried that this is going to fuck up. And the reason why that has to happen is because it's not about me. It's about how do I make those around me better. So by letting go of that fear of judgment of others, letting go of that concern that I can't be proud of what I made or that what I did could have been done better, letting go of that and just saying, it's not about me. It's about making those around me better. I just did it. You just watched me and these 32, 33 minutes so far go through this process of self-discovery. And whether or not this was helpful for you, it lets you can apply it to your own life, or maybe even it just gives you some measure or some idea. Maybe there's some 16-year-old or 17-year-old out there who's going to be way better than I am, going through the struggles that I did, sees this and like hopefully has that realization sooner than I did. But yeah, you just watched me. This is meta as fuck. You just watched me in my first take of my first video talking about the struggles and mental concepts behind not being able to make a video. Make the video that allows me to continue making these videos and push forward from here. Like, this video is the birth of my career as someone who can make those around him better. I went through the transformative experience coaching. I got to be put and isolated in that role and succeed and fail in that role. To now come here as an entertainer and as someone who can make people around him better for the rest of my life. I'm still talking right now just because I feel like there's something still to be discovered. I'm not sure if that's even the case. I'm not sure if that's even true, but wow. Why the fuck am I recording this video? I sincerely hope every single person who's ever met me and gets to see this video And at the same time, I hope no one ever sees this video because it's 35 minutes of me talking about just my experiences in gaming and my past self. And if somehow you waded through that meaningless bullshit and got to the end where we are right now, um, high five. I don't fucking know. This is as new and scary to me as it is scary to listen to, and I'm sure not that entertaining. But this is the first step. This is the birth of a creator. And this is how I started making the world around me better. I think right here is where I press the stop recording button and go the fuck to bed. But we'll see what we wake up to tomorrow morning.